Ohio high school students expelled because their parents campaigned against teaching racism in school. Columbus Academy, an exclusive private school in Columbus, Ohio, has expelled 3 students due to a campaign led by their mothers against the teaching of racism in their curriculum. So I fail to see the loss here. I mean, I think that they were paying top dollar for this private school. Whatever, take that money and use it better elsewhere. What parents need to learn is that the legacy public indoctrination system and the higher indoctrination system are losing their value more as time goes on. With the exception of very few careers that you need higher indoctrination for, you could live just fine without it. Just do your research first, see if you even need it. The Academy informed Andrea Gross and Amy Gonzalez that their children would not be welcome back at the school for the next school year. Gross had two children as students, whereas Gonzalez had 1. Now, according to the Daily Mail, the letter sent to the 2 parents claimed that they had to breach the contract with the school by failing to promote the racism that the school is trying to indoctrinate their kids with. The letter continued by stating the 2 mothers pursued a course of action that has been anything but civil, respectful, and faithful to the facts. So, translation, only we are allowed to behave this way. You can't. Instead, you have engaged in a campaign against Columbus Academy through a sustained and increasingly inflammatory series of attacks on the school and its leadership. Yeah, they claimed the attacks are false and misleading, but this school is literally teaching racism to their kids and thinks it's okay. And the parents, they got no other avenue to fight back other than pulling their kids out, which is what I recommend, by the way. And it's going to become especially important as we go on and talking more about this. So your actions caused pain and even fear for physical safety among students, families, faculty, and staff. So the racist curriculum that these teachers bring to their classrooms are causing all of this exact stuff, particularly against the white kids, but nobody cares about them. Gross and Gonzalez, however, have a very different take on the situation, saying the school refused to even acknowledge their coalition or dialogue with them in any way. Sounds to me like this was the best outcome then. Your kids are no longer a part of that broken school and you can move them somewhere better. What's the fucking problem? Every single parent should be pulling their kids out of these schools. This is an indoctrinational institution that has chosen to punish children for their parents asking questions, stated Gonzalez. I mean, the damage this does to the community, obviously our children as well, and it's ripping our community apart, Gross chimed in. Starve them of money. This is a private school. I don't think they get any money from the government. If everyone just pulls their kids out of this school, they're going to be bankrupt within the year. We probably just about 5 months ago started asking questions, simple questions surrounding curriculum for our kids, board of trustees. We questioned deep-seated structural accountability programs, and that's why they're getting rid of you. You asked too many inconvenient questions. The dictatorship doesn't like being questioned. So, and in doing so, everything that we had suspected about bullying, intimidation, being marginalized, how now occurred, and resulted in our kids being expelled from the school. Our children are innocent. Would you really want your kids in an institution that does this? That's my question. Would you want them there? Because I sure as hell wouldn't. It's the same thing that happens like when employees sue their employers for any reason. It doesn't matter if it's 100% justified or not. You have to realize once you sue your employer, it's over. Even if they're legally required to bring you back, you're never going to advance in that company. They will probably just give you what's called a lateral promotion just to get you out of the way. There comes a time when you just got to just break off the relationship completely. Now, in the case of suing your employer, yeah, sure, sue them, get a bunch of money, and leave, but don't expect to be welcomed back if you do something like that. So this here, I have to ask the parents, would you really want your kids back in that school? You realize you could give them a much better education if you just homeschool them, right? For way less time. 1 hour a day is all you need to teach kids at the same level as the public indoctrination system. And I know this for a fact because when I was in school suspension in the public indoctrination system, I finished all my work for the day and got straight A's on it in an hour. These kids do not need to be imprisoned for like 7-8 hours a day. And finally, I said there's more. You think it was bad enough that a private school went and expelled some students because of what their parents did? Well, take a look at what's going on in the public indoctrination system. America's largest teachers union approves pro-racism agenda for every state and 14,000 school districts. Pull your kids out of these brainwashing indoctrination institutions ASAP. I was saying a decade ago that if I ever wanted to have kids, it would have to be outside of the US. I worked in the indoctrination system 10 years ago. Actually, wait, let me double check that. Oh God, I'm a boomer. It was more like 14 years ago now. Ooh, damn. But I used to work in the indoctrination system. I've seen how corrupt it is from the inside. I was saying even back then that I would not want to put my kids through the American public indoctrination system. If I were to have kids, I'd do it in another country where they could get a proper education. And now, fast forward over a decade, things are even worse. The largest teachers union in the United States, the National Indoctrination Association, has approved a plan to promote racism at all 50 states throughout 14,000 local school districts. This decision was made at the current year NEA annual meeting, where a number of significant issues were discussed, including a vote on mandatory Coronavirus vaccinations, masks, and testing for students. Yeah, how about just cut their funding? So here's the thing with local school districts. You want to know who pays for them? If you own a house, and I mean own, not rent, you could be paying a mortgage. That still counts. Take a look at your property tax statements one day. 85 to 90% of my property taxes that I pay every year go to the school. The schools are funded primarily at the local level. If you are sick and tired of this, get politically involved at the local level and defund any school that does this. Fire all of these corrupt teachers and replace them. You have the power to do so at the local level. As detailed by the now approved proposal, teachers will be required to learn more about racism and fighting back against anti-racism efforts, including efforts to dispute the widely debunked New York Lies 1619 Project, an alternate retelling of American history that claims the Founding Fathers declared independence to protect slavery. Jeez. Man, they're just blatantly rewriting history. It's pathetic. They will also be required to provide an in-depth curriculum that critiques empire, non-existent white supremacy, anti-blackness, anti-indigeneity, racism, patriarchy, cis-heteropatriarchy, capitalism, ableism, and anthropocentrism, and a host of other oppressive forces. So the lunatics manufactured their version of Satan, and every single thing they indoctrinate has to be reading about Satan. Furthermore, indoctrinators will emphasize topics of slavery and oppression of indigenous, black, brown, and other peoples of color in American society. Teachers must also join with Burn, Loot, Murder at school and the Zinn Indoctrination Project to rally on October 14th, George Kirby's birthday, to be turned into a national day of action to teach lessons about structural racism and oppression. Now, you guys are just using that as an excuse to push your racism, and we know it. You're the only ones dumb enough to still fall for it. But remember, it's never been more important than right now, here in the US, to exercise your right to pull your kids out of these corrupt systems while you still can. In Europe, you realize you're not allowed to. In Europe, you're legally forced to put your kids through this brainwashing. And there's nothing you can do about it other than leave the country. But here's the catch. If they get wind of you wanting to leave the country to protect the kids from this indoctrination, they will literally steal your kids from you and claim it's for the kids' own good. It happened to a family in Germany that tried to homeschool their kids and the government told them no. So they were planning on leaving the country. So the government came in and stole their kids from them. You're going to have to just leave without telling them. And make sure that as far as your government's concerned, they think you're only going on a vacation and then you just never come back. It's sad that we have to resort to these tactics to protect our own children, but that's the world we live in. According to new business item 39 on the agenda, the NEA will, with the guidance on implementation from the NEA president and chairs of the Ethnic Minority Affairs caucuses, and these are in their own words, although I may modify things a little bit here and there to make them more truthful, but here we go. Share and publicize through existing channels information already available on racism, what it is and what it is not. Have a team of staffers for members who want to learn more and fight back against anti-racism rhetoric, and share information with other NEA members as well as their community members. Provide already created in-depth study that critiques empire, white supremacy, anti-blackness, all that shit we just talked about, and that we oppose attempts to ban racism and teaching of the 1619 project. So these guys 100% support racism. Publicly, through existing media, convey its support for the accurate and honest teaching of social studies topics. That would be a welcome change of pace, because that's the opposite of what they're doing now. Includes truthful and age-appropriate accountings of the unpleasant aspects of American history, except for the stuff they're conveniently rewriting, such as slavery and the oppression and discrimination of indigenous, black, brown, and other people of color, as well as continued impact this history has on our current society. The association will further convey that in teaching these topics, it is reasonable and appropriate for curriculum to be informed by academic frameworks for understanding and determining the impact of the past on current society, including racism. So the important thing to remember is before these race hustlers brought back racism, we were a good 95% of the way to a colorblind society. We had almost solved racism, other than a few holdouts. Then the race hustlers and professional victims realized, fuck, if racism gets solved, how will we get paid? How will we get our easy money being professional victims? So they intentionally stirred up racial divisions and hatred again, just so they can make a quick buck. And so many fucking idiots among the general population just took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. This society deserves everything it gets. So join with Burn, Loot, Murder at School and the Zin Indoctrination Project for a rally this year on October 14th, George Kirby's birthday, as a National Day of Action. Yeah, we read that. Followed by one day of action that recognized and honor the lives taken, such as Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, and others. The National Indoctrination Association shall publicize these National Days of Action to all its members, including an NEA today. So now would be a good time for a lot of, if I know there's a few reasonable members here, leave this union. This is why it's also important to, like I mentioned earlier, get involved at the local level in your political system. You might be able to find a way to force your local districts out of this union. Now, conduct a virtual listening tour that will indoctrinate members on the tools and resources needed to defend honesty and indoctrination, including but not limited to tools like racism. Commit President Becky Pringle to make public statements across all lines of media that support racial honesty and indoctrination, including but not limited to racism. As detailed by anti-racism crusader Christopher Rufo, the union has also approved funding for increasing the implementation of racism in the K-12 curriculum and for attacking conservative organizations and individuals who oppose racism. The organization has made it its number one priority. That is right. The teachers union, whose job is supposed to be to, basically raise your kids in your place. Let's be honest. That's all that this public indoctrination system in the West is doing, just lifting the burden from the parents and putting it on onto the government. And don't complain. If you give your kids over to the government for indoctrination, just know what you're getting. And their number one priority is teaching your kids racism. It's never been more important than right now to starve this system. Another change you can make at the local level is fight for school choice. It's not a federal thing. It's district by district, state, city, local level. They got their own rules about school choice. Because the problem usually is that because these schools primarily get their money from property taxes, you're legally obligated to send your kids to the public indoctrination school that is in the district that you pay property taxes for. So wherever you physically live, you have to send your kids to that school, which is why a lot of inner city parents are complaining that they're being forced to send their kids into failing schools that'll obviously turn their kids into failures and perpetuate the cycle. They don't even have the option to transfer their kids to a better school unless they physically moved. And a lot of these people are too poor to physically move. But what if you got more involved at the local level politically and decided to get rid of these laws? Start implementing new ones like funding students, not systems. Give the parents a school choice voucher. Let them send their kids to better schools. That would fix the problem with these failing schools overnight. They would just go bankrupt. They'd shut down. All the horrible teachers would lose their jobs. The problem would solve itself. You can make the difference at the local level. Too many people are distracted looking at federal level politics all the time. But by far, the best chance you have at actually making a real difference is at the local level. Don't forget that. Oh man, I am so excited to tell you guys right now that finally, after about a year of build-up and shilling, we have launched Blade Devil on Indiegogo, and so far it is doing so well thanks to awesome people like you. If you haven't backed it yet, then please check the links in the description and check out Blade Devil on Indiegogo. You will not be disappointed. Looking forward to seeing you there.